On the night of November 8, 1983, a tour bus carrying Tina Turner was stopped on the shoulder of Interstate 65 in Tennessee by a storm that made the road impassable. The bus had been traveling south from Louisville to Nashville. The storm arrived from the west without warning sufficient to do anything about. The driver pulled over at 11:20 at night. He said it was too dangerous to continue. He said they would wait it out. They waited for 3 hours. What happened on that bus on the shoulder of Interstate 65? What Tina Turner said to the driver, and what he said back, and what they were both doing at 2 in the morning when the storm finally moved east, Thomas has carried with him for more than 40 years without telling anyone who didn't need to know. Thomas had been driving tour buses for 12 years by the time the small November run came through Louisville in 1983. He had started in his early 30s, initially as a freight driver, and then, through a contact who worked in concert logistics, into the specific world of moving musicians between cities. He had driven buses carrying acts of various sizes, some well-known, some less so, some in the ascending portion of their careers, and some in portions that were harder to characterize optimistically. He was good at the work. The particular temperament it required, patience, discretion, the ability to manage the logistics of being responsible for a group of people who were in a different relationship to schedules and sleep than most of the world, suited him. He was a quiet man. He kept what he saw to himself. He did his job, and he went home. And he did not trade in the currency of what he had witnessed, which was the currency that the people around touring musicians tended to deal in more than he thought was warranted. He had learned, 12 years in, to read a situation accurately without being invited to participate in it. He had been assigned the Louisville leg as part of a small run of November dates, 3 cities in 4 days, the kind of routing that fills gaps in a calendar rather than anchoring a major tour. The venues were mid-sized rooms in cities that were not the primary markets, the kind of dates that filled the schedule between the moments that the schedule was organized around. He had done runs like this before. He knew what they were. What he had not done before was drive Tina Turner. The Louisville show had been on a Wednesday evening. The venue held approximately 2,000 people. Thomas had been in the loading area for most of the performance and had not seen the show itself, but he had heard it. The specific acoustic quality of a live performance reaching the loading dock through the building's walls, the particular bass register of a sound system at working volume, the crowd response arriving in waves at the intervals he could not see from outside. He had registered, through the walls, that what was happening inside was doing something to the room. He did not think about this very much. He was a bus driver. He started loading the equipment the moment the crew began moving it. They departed Louisville at 10:45. The band and crew settled into the back of the bus in the way of people who had been doing this for months and knew the exact configuration of rest that a 4-hour drive between shows required. Within 30 minutes, most of the bus was quiet. Tina Turner was not asleep. She was sitting several rows behind Thomas, near the window, in the way she sometimes traveled on these runs. Not in the front lounge, not in the back, but somewhere in the middle, in the ordinary dark of the bus moving through an ordinary November night on an interstate highway in Tennessee. The storm arrived at 11:15, not gradually, with the abruptness that storms in that part of the country can arrive with in November, when the temperature differential between the systems can produce conditions that develop faster than the forecasting infrastructure of 1983 could reliably predict. Rain first, then rain at a volume that made the road ahead visible for approximately 20 meters. Thomas reduced speed. At 11:20, he could not safely see far enough ahead to continue. He signaled, moved to the shoulder, and stopped. He made the announcement briefly. Storm,
Road conditions unsafe. They were going to wait.
He would monitor. He would move when it was possible to move. Several people in the back of the bus acknowledged this and went back to sleep. One band member said something that was not an objection, but an expression of mild resignation. Tina Turner, several rows back, said, "All right." And that was it. The bus settled into the particular stillness of a vehicle stopped on the side of a highway in the rain at midnight, waiting for the weather to make a decision. Thomas sat at the wheel and watched the storm. He had his coffee from the thermos he brought on every run. The rain hammered the roof of the bus. The highway was invisible beyond 20 meters in any direction. He could hear the breathing of the people sleeping in the back. After perhaps 15 minutes, he heard movement from several rows back. Then Tina Turner was in the seat directly behind the driver's position, not in the seat beside him, but in the first row of the passenger section, close enough to talk without raising her voice above the sound of the rain. She asked how long he thought it would take. He said he genuinely did not know. He said it depended on the system and how fast it was moving, and he did not have a way to find that out until it moved or it didn't. He said he was sorry. She said, "Don't be sorry. It's not your storm." What followed was not a planned conversation. It was the conversation that happens when two people are in a confined space at midnight, with nowhere to go and nothing particularly requiring their attention except the rain and the dark and the time that needed to pass before the weather would permit them to move. The specific quality of a conversation that nobody chose, that simply arrived the way the storm had arrived, without asking for permission. She asked about the drive, how long he had been doing this, what the routes were like, which cities he preferred for reasons that had nothing to do with the venues, just the roads, the landscape, the quality of the driving through different parts of the country. He told her. He was specific. He had opinions about Highway 65 versus 40 in November. He had preferences about Tennessee versus Kentucky at that time of year. She listened. He asked about Louisville. Not the show. He had learned over 12 years that asking about the show itself was often the wrong question. He asked something smaller. He asked if she had eaten before the show or after. She laughed. She said after. She said she couldn't eat before, couldn't do it, never could. She said it was the one thing that had never changed in 25 years. The inability to eat a full meal before going on stage. Everything else about her pre-show routine had evolved. That had stayed fixed. Thomas said his daughter was 16 and wanted to be a singer. He said it in the careful way that parents say things like that about their children to people who are in a position to have opinions, not asking for a verdict, not fishing for encouragement, but acknowledging that the person they were talking to was in a better position than most to know what wanting to be a singer meant. Tina Turner was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Does she perform anywhere?" He said she sang at school events. He said she was good. He said he thought she was good, but that he was aware he was her father, and that fathers were not reliable assessors of their children's gifts. She said, "Take her to the smallest room you can find and put her in front of people who don't know her. See what she does with it." She said, "The size of the room doesn't tell you anything. What she does with a small room tells you everything." Thomas turned this over. He looked at the rain on the windshield. He thought about the venues he had driven through in 12 years, the large ones and the small ones, the sold-out nights and the nights that weren't, the rooms that his passengers had performed in at full output, regardless of whether those rooms deserved it. He had watched this happen over and over without quite naming it. She had just named it. He said, "Is that what you do?" She did not answer immediately. She looked at the rain for a moment. Then she said,
I try.
She said that the rooms he was driving her to that week were not the rooms she was going to be in a few years. She said this without arrogance and without the particular certainty of someone who is trying to convince themselves of something they're not sure of. She said it the way people state things they have assessed honestly and arrived at through evidence rather than hope. She said, "But the people in those rooms right now are not a placeholder for a better audience. They are the audience." The storm moved east at approximately 2:15 in the morning. Thomas checked the road, confirmed visibility, and started the engine. The sleeping people in the back of the bus shifted and resettled. Tina Turner went back to her seat. Thomas put the bus in gear and pulled onto the highway. They reached Nashville at 3:45. He unloaded the bus and drove it to the lot where he was parked between runs. He sat in the empty bus for a few minutes before he got in his car to go home. He told his daughter what she had said. He did not frame it as something famous. He framed it as something true, a thing that a woman had said on a stopped bus in a rainstorm at midnight, which was the context in which she had said it, and which was the right context for it. His daughter took it with her. She did not become a famous singer. She performed in small rooms for years, and then, when the rooms did not grow in the way she had hoped, she made a decision about what she was going to do with her life that was not about performing, but that kept what she had learned in those small rooms at the center of it. She became a music teacher. She has taught for 19 years. She tells her students the same thing, not as a borrowed quotation. She has never named the source, partly because her father told it to her as a thing that was true rather than a thing that was said by someone specific, and partly because it has been true in every room she has stood in since. The size of the room doesn't tell you anything. What you do with a small room tells you everything. Tina Turner played Nashville the following night. Thomas was not driving that leg. He passed the bus to the next driver and went back to Louisville. He caught the Nashville show on the radio 3 weeks later. Not this show, a broadcast of a different show from the same run, and listened from his car in the driveway for 45 minutes with the engine off. He thought about Interstate 65, about the rain, about the things that get said in a stopped bus at midnight that nobody plans and nobody records, and that travel forward in time and the people who were present for them, becoming something different in each person they pass through, landing eventually in a classroom in a city neither of them ever discussed, in the mouth of a music teacher, telling her students something they will need. The rooms don't determine the effort determines the rooms. She had been saying that with her work for 25 years. It just took a rainstorm to put it into words. If this story moved something in you, share it with someone today. Subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment. What is something someone said to you in an unexpected moment that you have carried ever since? We tell these stories because they deserve to be told. We'll see you in the next one.